Salutations, folks, and welcome to the Screen Time Podcast, a podcast for all things film, television, anime, which I suppose is also film and television, and gaming. The idea behind this podcast is essentially that, by the way, that was a kind of shitty intro. I'm probably not gonna keep that in future installments. Anyway. The idea behind this podcast is that myself and lifelong best friend slash co-host spend a lot of time with virtual entertainment. He is much more into gaming than I am, and I'm much more into film than he is, and we sort of meet in the middle on TV. So we just, talk about it a lot. And thought, hey, let's record some of this shit and put it on the internet. And now we're here. However, he is not with me at the moment. This is just so that I have an audio file to mess around with. So I'm not really even considering this episode 1. I'm just sort of considering it episode 0.5. But let's get into our discussion topic. Tonight we're going to be talking about 2 episodes of television that I watched last weekend while not sober. We're going to be talking about episode 1 of The Midnight Gospel and book 2, episode 2 of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So, story time. Last weekend, I had finally decided that I was going to watch The Midnight Gospel. I had heard of it about, I think it was a year or so ago when it came out. I saw an ad for it on a Joe Rogan video on YouTube, which is perfect advertisement placement for this show. The show is basically a psychedelic, I don't know, it's like a podcast set to psychedelic visuals, I guess. The show is centered around this dude who looks like he belongs in a lo-fi thumbnail, and he's living on this dope-ass space planet, which I suppose all planets are space planets, but that's not the point. He's just chilling out in space somewhere, and everything around him looks incredible. And he has this multiverse simulator, which may or may not resemble a giant glowing labia, but, that's here nor there. And from what I'm given to understand, I've only seen the first episode, but each episode revolves around him going into this multiverse simulator and interviewing people across the multiverse. He'll pick a reality that he wants to go to, he'll go there, find someone to talk to, and they become a guest on his podcast. And that's basically what the show is about, I guess. I say about in finger quotes, because really what the show is about is taking your high from 1 to 10 in 20 minutes. It's, oh man, this is some trippy ass shit. And don't get me wrong, I like trippy things because, I have a hard on for abstract art. I went to school for communications that focused in video technology. I can't remember what the phrasing was, but I always call it film school. And I get into a real art student type of headspace whenever something abstract or psychedelic comes my way. And I was really excited for that. Like, I knew I had to be in the mood to watch Midnight Gospel, and, I just wasn't in the mood for the first year it was out, but last weekend I inhaled the proper mood and decided, you know what? Tonight's the night. We're doing it. So I started the show, and I was really happy with the visuals and just overall vibe of the show for the first, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes. Time was a little hard to tell. Um, and then about 10 minutes in, I was getting a little weirded out by the show and had to take a break. And I went and watched Avatar, and I just sort of took, I think, 35 minutes before I came back to the show. I wasn't sure if I was going to, but I thought, I should see this episode through. Maybe I've just getting tripped out here and it's not the show's fault. I'm gonna try this again. And when I went back to it, I ended up finishing the episode, but it didn't necessarily live up to what I was hoping it would be. But that's not to say that it's objectively bad. I mean, it's art, so we're talking subjective here, but it it felt like it was 50% for me and 50% just not happening, not vibing on it. If we were to get into what I like about the Midnight Gospel, it's gonna sound stonery for me to just be like, oh, well, I really liked the trippy shit, but I did. Um, I loved the art style. It felt like a lo-fi thumbnail come to life, but not like one of those like sad, like it's 3 a.m. and then I miss her lo-fi thumbnails. Like one of those, I don't know, like high and chillin' lo-fi thumbnails. I don't know where I was going with that. I'm recording this in the early hours of the AM. Anyway, tangent aside, I loved the visuals. Art style was great. I'm told one of the dudes responsible for Adventure Time is involved in this, and I guess I could kind of see it. Um, I'm not overly familiar with Adventure Time, nor am I, you know, knowledgeable on animation, at least not as much as I'd like to be. But, like, having known that, I can look at it and say, yeah, I see it, but that's, I don't know if I would have picked up on it if it wasn't illustrated to me. I was always a regular show kid back in the day. But, yeah, I mean, also, aside from all the pretty pictures, I also did like the protagonist of the show. I think his name is Clancy, if I'm not mistaken. He seems like a chill-ass dude. Like, it's not the type of show that you watch for character, at least not from the first episode. I've yet to go past that. Um, like, it's more so a show for atmosphere and the conversation between him and the other lead. But he is a likable character, and that's pretty cool. But the stuff that I don't like about the show is much easier for me to describe than just me trying to put psychedelic art into words. Um, First off, I didn't care for the stoner philosophy in the show, you know, but that's more of a personal preference thing. Like, it's not a dialogue problem. The dialogue is delivered incredibly well. It genuinely feels like a really good podcast that just happens to be animated. But the nature of what they were talking about was not really what I was there for. Because what I like when uh, getting into herbally enhanced television is I like stuff that I can just sort of interpret as having abstract meanings without necessarily like having trippy shit be the focus of what they're talking about. You know, I don't necessarily want people to be like, hey, all our audience members are on drugs, so let's talk about what drugs feel like. I just want to watch stuff and go, oh, I feel this way about it. I wonder if that's what the person making it felt. I wonder what this piece of art says about just human thought process, and I don't really like to have answers for the questions. I just like to ask them and eat. And the show's just like, hey, you're on drugs, so we're going to show you a bunch of really trippy visuals and talk about what it's like doing psychedelics. And I just wasn't down for it. But if you are, then cool. The other part that I didn't really care for, and this might have been the part that turned me off the most. I'm not sure. But it was the setting for the first episode. So, I assume the point of the show, the point of the main character traveling around throughout the multiverse is to get all kinds of wacky, crazy shenanigans going on because, hey, it's the multiverse. Anything can happen. But I just didn't vibe with the setting for the first episode. Essentially, the corner of the multiverse that the protagonist travels to in episode 1 is dealing with a zombie apocalypse. And, I just didn't like it, didn't feel like it helped the show any. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-zombie media. I watched Walking Dead for quite a while, longer than most people. I would play zombie games sometimes, but I came to realize that I did all that sober, and apparently, herbally enhanced me. Not a big zombie guy, or at least not the way they did it. The problem really wasn't the fact that it was zombies. The problem was the way that they portrayed the zombie apocalypse in this show. Essentially, what was happening was the main character was interviewing I think it was the President of the United States. I can't remember. Someone up in government. He was interviewing him for his podcast, and they were trying to evade zombies and just do battle with the zombie apocalypse while casually having a conversation. And, in a way, I get the joke that they were trying to go for with, having a really intense background with a really casual foreground in terms of what you're supposed to be paying attention to. I get that, that's a joke that you can find anywhere in any type of show, but I just didn't like their particular execution of it, of like chaos in the background, but hey, don't worry about it, just focus on something else. Because the way that they did it was honestly just a bit too graphic for me. Um, the beautiful, beautiful space imagery had me, it had me feeling things, it had me thinking things, and then it throws you into the zombie apocalypse, and you get all these images of, you know, people being eaten by reanimated corpses and being, just torn apart by gunfire and whatnot. And it's treated with a sense of apathy for the most part that, you know, toked up me just wasn't having it. Like, it'd be one thing, if it was, I don't know, if the zombies were handled in a more empathetic way, like if you were supposed to feel for or like the tragedy going on, then maybe I could get into it. But it was just sort of, I don't know, apathetic is really just the word. I mean, of course, they're cartoon people, and you're supposed to be focusing on the conversation about psychedelics, but like, I wasn't necessarily into the on the nose drug conversation happening in the foreground, and in the background, I wasn't into the mutilation and pain and suffering. Like, it felt like, I don't know, it just felt icky to me, and I just didn't care for that. This is why I should write things down before I start talking. This is also why it will be incredibly, incredibly beneficial to have my co-host with me so that he can stop me from rambling and going on tangents. Um, yeah, so overall, episode 1 of The Midnight Gospel was a pretty mixed bag for me. I loved the psychedelic space imagery, and I thought the main character was, a cool type of dude, someone I could connect to. Like, I want to like him. Like, there were so many shots in this that I could see myself putting up as a desktop screensaver or something. But overall, I don't know if I really want to go back to the show because I just didn't care for most of its vibe. I loved the beginning and end when he's just chilling on his little planet and just vibing, being all aesthetically pleasing and chill. I liked that. But I didn't care for the, hey, you're high, guess what? This show's all about drugs. Let's talk about it. And I didn't really care for the, hey, these dumb fuckers are getting eaten by zombies. Fuck them, right? At least that's the vibe that I got. I'm not gonna lie. I was not at all sober in the process of watching this. Maybe there was something I missed. I don't know, but you know, the, I don't know if people who don't engage in psychoactive substances would really get much out of the show. Maybe they would. I have no idea. I have not tried watching this sober, but it didn't feel the the high sitter that I was hoping it would be. But it wasn't all bad. It definitely had its positives, and what I don't like about it is subjective to me. If you're down for people talking about drugs while people get eaten by zombies, cool. You know, I I feel like I could definitely grow to like the show, but I don't know how soon I'm gonna come back to it. So there you have it, Midnight Gospel, episode 1. Let's take a second here to talk about the episode of Avatar that I watched when Midnight Gospel was freaking me out and I needed to calm down for a minute. So after I decided, you know what, I've got to take a break from this, I got up, warmed up a microwave burrito, came back down to the couch, said, you know what, fuck it, let's watch some Avatar The Last Airbender. Now, I had seen the first episode when it aired, but it took me until New Year's Eve of 2020 to actually finish Avatar The Last Airbender, and it might be my favorite show of all time. I'm not sure. It's up there. Um, and I had seen a lot of the episodes out of order when they aired, and one episode that I had seen more often than others, but was never really one of my favorites, was Book 2, Episode 2, The Cave of Two Lovers. Now, I'm just going to assume, if for some reason you're still listening to me talk, that you're cool. And if you're cool, you probably know what Avatar The Last Airbender is, so I'm not going to explain it. Plus, this is longer than I thought it was going to be for something that's not even a real episode. Okay, so quick note, I was listening to the video again, and I realized I did say that I assume you know what Avatar is, but I didn't directly give out a spoiler warning. So, Avatar spoilers coming up. So let's just talk about why I really liked this episode. First and foremost, Chong. Fucking Chong, dude. I love that guy. I didn't necessarily understand that he was a stoner joke back in the day. Um, but, obviously he is. I mean, they named him Chong. I'm like 99% sure. But now that I'm saying it and I know I'm being recorded, I'm like, fuck, is that his name? Anyway, you know the dude. I'm actually, I'm I got a ukulele recently, and I want to try to learn the Secret Tunnel song. So hopefully that'll work out. I don't know, but I love that dude. I love his vibe. He makes me laugh. He makes me laugh, when I'm not on the cactus juice. But when I am, he's fucking hilarious. I really love how he interacts with Sokka. I feel like that is a pretty good visual for what this podcast is going to be. Just like I am sort of Chong like, my best friend is sort of Sokka like, and we just talk about movies and stuff. That's basically what this podcast is going to be. Um, right now, you just get the long-winded ramblings, but in actual episodes, you'll get a well-balanced conversation. Um, so I love me some Chong, and on the other side of this, the Aang and Katara stuff. This may be an unpopular opinion amongst the Avatar fandom. I'm not sure. I haven't let myself look anything up when I was really actually watching the show for the first time. And I'm sort of getting into the Avatar culture now. But I don't really care that much about the Aang and Katara romance throughout the show. Um, you know, I just don't. Maybe that's just me being an aromantic, hating and not relating. I don't know. um, but I just never really cared for it that much. I'm sure I put a spoiler warning earlier in this, but again, spoilers. I didn't really like that Aang and Katara kissing was how the show ended. I I get it, but it's just not the highlight of Avatar for me. This episode, though, I was okay with it. I think they did a good job. If you can make me get into a romance plot line in a show, you must be doing something right. Um, and this episode just does. I don't know what it is, but just that scene where their torch is almost out of light and they have to trust in the power of love or whatever, which sounds stupid when I say it now, but in the episode, when you're in it, when you're watching it, it's like, yeah, you fucking trust in the power of love and light that tunnel the fuck up, dude. And then they do, and it's great. Um, I also gotta love the badger moles. Is that what they are? Badger moles? I feel like that was the wombo combo they had going on. And those are pretty cool. I really kind of dug the earthbending in this episode. Like, I'm never usually big on earthbending as far as the Avatar elements go, you know? I feel like I'm mostly an air type guy. The water people are cool, fire people are cool. But earth was always just sort of there for me. But these fucking badger mole creatures earth bending their way around the cave, I dug that. It made me kind of vibe with the earthbender folk. Yeah. Alright, well, this has been a tad bit of a clusterfuck, but I think I'm gonna try to put it up anyway. Hopefully, no one sees this until episode 1 is actually out, and because like if this is your first impression of the show, I'm sorry. I just needed a file to fuck around with, and thought, hey, you know what? I can talk about TV for half an hour. I guess technically